Good morning, everyone. I apologize I couldn't be with you today. I am chairing a workshop in Copenhagen this week and therefore couldn't travel to Oslo. I would like to talk to you a little bit about where we are at with marine and coastal tourism and what we are finding so far. So I think the key messages are quite simple. Firstly, that we are on a road to recovery post-COVID for tourism across the Nordic nations. There is some disparities in the rate of recovery. Some regions and some nations are slower. And then while we see that the patterns, the intra-annual patterns of tourism has recovered as well, there is still some volatility in Iceland, and that seasonality is shortening in Sweden. I think what is quite novel here is that we have used social media to estimate the contribution of marine and coastal tourism from tourism statistics. I'll talk to that briefly. There is large variability in marine and coastal tourism potentials between regions, as we would expect. Tourism remains a large contributor to both GVA and employment, and there is scope for growth, which is not limited by the built infrastructure. And then, of course, we'll touch upon the environmental footprint, which is not trivial. And it's worth knowing that we will have a separate section for cruise tourism, which has a different set of contributions to nations, both in terms of positive contribution and negative contributions. So this is the state of play when we look at overnight stays. On the left-hand side, you can see that post the 2020 shock, nations are recovering. We can see that the rate of change post-COVID is a little bit different between nations. And it's worth knowing that while here I'm showing you the total number of overnight stays as a measure of tourism volume coming to these nations, the composition differs, right? So for those top nations, we are looking at predominantly national tourists, and then we have nations like Iceland, which are predominantly covered by international tourism. The flow network, so who comes to those destinations, has not changed over the past 25 years, and we've got some understanding of it now, which is pictured here. So we were able to make use of approaches we have used in the past, using both Wikipedia to understand the amount of attractiveness that different regions have, the attractions located in different regions have for tourism, as well as using OpenStreetMap to understand the infrastructure that is present. And here we are qualifying infrastructure related to marine and coastal tourism. We're using a proxy of the proportion of hotels that are seafront within 100 meters of a coastline. And the number of attractions here corresponds to attractions that are reported by users in these different regions related to, that are within 250 meters of a coastline. There's a lot to unpack there, which we don't have the time to talk about just yet. Here I wanted to show a picture of kind of economic contribution and using here employment. I think one of the key challenges that remains, to be very fair, globally with tourism is that there is a lack of standardization of reporting on all aspects of the footprint of tourism, which makes it challenging. Norway is a super good example here of good practices where we're able to disaggregate by age and sex data on employment. And here we can see that it allows us to see that the sector is, in terms of employment, is predominantly dominated by young women, but that post-COVID, and actually you can see some of those trends where from before, we are seeing some decline in the overall contribution to employment of different sectors of tourism, which I've got highlighted here in the 4 columns. Women's are at the top, men's are at the bottom. And we can see some slight aging in the employee cohorts associated with tourism. So why is this important? Well, it's important to really understand where infrastructure of tourism and the activities associated with tourism are located, because they have a ecological footprint. So we can relate it to indicators that are directly can be related to SDG target indicators, greenhouse gas emissions, resource use, habitat modification and disturbance. Here we will make use of IUCN Red List, as we have done in other projects, to understand the biodiversity footprint of both infrastructure as well as activities, and try to understand a bit, particularly water usage and greenhouse gas emissions to a limited extent, unfortunately, because the data is not as quite clearly attributable for tourism. And finally, that's important to understand those footprint, to understand how they relate to it. So the infrastructure of tourism and the activities of tourism are contributing differently to both employment and GVA, and therefore understanding positive economic contribution in relation to deterioration of social and ecological dimensions is important to understand how to best forecast what is a sustainable trajectory for tourism. Thanks for your time. So feel free to email me for any questions. Bert is also here who can answer any questions, and we can move on to the next sections. Thanks a lot.